Okay, we live now.
Got it. You're live.
All right. Good evening. My name is Antoinette Peel, and I'm the president of the Joshua Johnson Council. It's a BMA affiliate group. It's one of the oldest African-American friends group or affiliate groups in the country, some 36 years. As you know, we are named after the first African-American portrait painter, Joshua Johnson, who lived and worked in Maryland. It's our mission to forge meaningful connections between Baltimore's African-American communities and the Baltimore Museum of Art by promoting and highlighting the achievements of African-American artists. The JJC membership, which is a membership organization, and our membership offers a wide range of opportunities for active participation within a network of friends and colleagues dedicated to art. Our members share a passion for African-American art. We're artists, art lovers, museum goers, collectors, educators, students, docents, and others who care about connecting with artists, the community, or the museum. We meet on the second Thursday of every month from September to June at 6 o'clock. 6:30 begins our JJC talks, which we've been doing for a little over a year now, with quite an overwhelming response, and we thank you for that. So how do you join the Baltimore Museum of Art? Through, actually we'll put it in the Facebook link so that you can see how to join by clicking on that link. You have to be a member of the BMA in order to join the Joshua Johnson Council. And that's also something we're going to put in the link so that you can have access to that. Right now, we're going to turn this over to Jean, who's going to tell you about our artists for the evening. And I want to again welcome you to the Baltimore Museum of Art's Joshua Johnson Council's affiliate for JJC Talks. Jean, take it away.
We are so delighted tonight to have one of our founding members with us. Alma Roberts has been a supporter through all these years, and it's delightful to see how she has herself developed as an artist. So thank you, Alma. I will read you from her some of the information about her background and her work. She included her age, so I suppose I'm allowed to say it. In 2011, at the age of 62, Alma Roberts picked up a paintbrush and began painting what has been called a fully formed, energetic, abstract compositions that belie the fact that she is new to the medium. Well, she's not so new now. She's been at this now about a decade, I would say. She has produced works of great insight that express her viewpoints on life and the issues and forces that impact it. Alma is also a founder and was a manager of a literary arts organization called New Breezes, which featured local poets and national literary figures such as Sonia Sanchez and Ntozake Shange. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, and she's a commissioner on the Baltimore Public Art Commission, which approves and oversees the installation and maintenance of public artworks throughout the city. Of her own work, she has had a successful solo exhibition at Baltimore City Hall's gallery in 2017. Piece of her work is owned by the James E. Lewis Museum at her alma mater, which is Morgan State University. She was among a prize-winning group of 50 artists selected from across the nation by the Mozaik Foundation for a groundbreaking virtual exhibit, Reimaging Democracy, in June 2021, and many, many others. It's our pleasure to have you here tonight, Alma, and thank you so much for joining us.
What a delight. Thank you, Jean. And so many familiar faces. George, hi. Thank you all so much for this opportunity to come home. This indeed is a homecoming for me, to join the Joshua Johnson Council once again. you know, you're often involved in many things. As an activist, I'm certainly doing out and about and doing many different things. And it is so good to see the sustainability of this this affinity group. It was groundbreaking at the time with its mission and the gamble that we'll say the BMA took. It is still relevant, the mission of this affinity group. I congratulate you, Antoinette, and the entire group for your ongoing activities. I want to thank Antoinette for a number of reasons, for the generous invitation to join you this evening, but also she is now one of my collectors. And so I thank her for that. I also want to thank Fred Cager, who brought my name to this group. He may not be here tonight, but please, I will find him down at Kevin Brown's and say thank you yet again. So with that, the famous phrase, I will share my screen. I'm trying to figure out how to make it do the whole thing here. Andrea, I'm seeing a little something different from what I saw yesterday in terms of how to make it a slideshow. Say that again.
I see an option. This is Antoinette. I see an option for slideshow. Go ahead, Andrea.
To view slideshow?
Yeah, I don't see it. Something is either blocking it or whatever. But anyway, do you all see my slides?
Yep, we did. I do.
Okay. Stop video. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm not sure why I can't make it full screen. Any rate, I'm going to have to do it this way because I can't see it. So I want to start with, and I know I want to try to go through my presentation in 30 minutes or less so that we have plenty of time for questions. But I want to start with a little more background on myself and how I got to pick up that paintbrush at the age of 62. So, most of you all know me as a healthcare executive. Most of the people in this group, it's been the common thread through all that the years that I've been doing whatever I've been doing in the arts and in the activities that I've been involved with in the community. And I just retired at the end of September with a 49-year career. And there are some of you who knew me when I started, founded the New Breezes and was part of this performance poetry group that you see here, and the group that also published collections of anthologies of local literary artists, and also put on performances and the like. I did the work with New Breezes from early 80s until I left the area in 1994 to take a healthcare job in Atlanta. And while I was in Atlanta, I made a purposeful decision that I wanted to become a mother. And there was an opportunity to meet the most endearing 4-year-old and the most rambunctious 4-year-old that stole my heart. And he adopted me as his mother. And I stopped writing, and I stopped well, I didn't stop. Let me just say, I redirected my focus to making sure that he had the quality of life that I had experienced as a child. And that meant exposure to art. That meant traveling and the like. And so I gave up my writing, but let me say that I must have transferred it by osmosis. This young man, who will be 30 years old in a few weeks, is a profound prose writer and poet and businessman, and he's an avid reader. One of the joys of my life was teaching him how to read, and now he has passed all that on to my lovely, gracious granddaughter. And then, of course, I came to be an artist at the age of 62. And I want to tell you how that happened, because it's not insignificant. In November of 2010, for the last 2 weeks, and many of you, some of you have heard this story, but bear with me because I lived it and it's still enchanting. Last 2 weeks of November 2010, every morning for 2 solid weeks, I was awakened with the idea, the thought, the dream, the what I can't even explain it to you now, what it was, except that I was being instructed to pick up a paintbrush and paint with my left hand over and over and over again for 2 solid weeks. A voice, a thought, a dream, whatever. Pick up a paintbrush and paint with your left hand. So my father, William Roberts, Papa, was a left-handed portraitist. I never saw his work. He made the ultimate sacrifice at about the time I was born to give up his art so that he could pursue work that allowed him to take care of his family in a more sustainable way. And so he made the ultimate sacrifice. And I lived with that story all of my life. It drove me to be a collector of art and to seek out all forms of art in museums and an artist, to support artists in any way I could. So Papa was a big part of this. Maybe that was him talking to me in November 2010. But I spent from November through the months of January, December, January, and in February, telling everybody about this occurrence. I told my sisters, and they said, of course, well, maybe it's Papa just making you, know his presence. And then finally, a new friend of mine, Lydia Woods, said, Alma, what the heck you got to lose? Pick up a paintbrush and paint with your left hand. And so I did just that. She bought me paint. She bought me easel. She bought me paintbrushes. And I had these clogs and they became, in fact, I actually have them on now. So I was off and running with painting with my left hand. In fact, on February 16th, I wrote her this text message, letting her know if I had completed my first Rembrandt. And here, what happened to it? Here it is. That is my very first painting. Tiny as it was like I was showing it off to everybody who I could. And I did give that as a gift to Lydia Woods for believing in my dream. And so I painted with my left hand rigorously. It was just flowing out of me in terms of the work that I was doing. I was painting and putting these works in the closet every time I finished one. This particular painting is a painting where I dedicated it to my father. It's a tribute to my father. His left hand, my left hand is what's symbolized here. But I wasn't intent on doing anything with the paintings other than painting my way through life, fulfilling the need to express this gift that had come upon me at such a late age. And so I painted left-handed and experimented in many ways. I'm self-taught, obviously. I hadn't even stumbled on YouTubes at this point. I'm really just experimenting and with color palettes and techniques and the like. So I stumbled onto that content, the idea of splattering. You know, I might have seen a movie or something where an artist was wildly throwing art and throwing paint. And so I said, why don't I try that and see what happens? I would go out in my front yard and dig up dirt and mix it in with paint to get texture and layers. I've always worked in many layers and with lots of texture to my work. I then added a little drizzle and some dots. Dots in my work will always mean a living entity, whether human or animal. It will always signify some sort of life. And so I did all kinds of splatter, drizzling, dots. This has some found object in it. Code and transmit has a actual found sort of a computer chip in it, and just really experimented many ways and many things. And then I went into this figurative sort of series, if you will. This is actually, I was at Kevin Brown's house and he was standing in front of a Venetian blind, and I just saw this image and went home and painted it. And so I began this series of headless bodies, lots of them. All of them have a story behind them. This painting, Two Spirit, came to me intact. I mean, I literally saw every piece of this, except for the fact that it had one heart, and I decided that it should have two hearts to coincide with the name Two Spirit, a Native American term that suggests that we all engender male and female. And very quickly, when I finished painting this painting, I came down from my studio about 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a slug in the middle of my carpet. Well, slugs, as you know, often leave trails as they move along. There was none. There was no trail. I looked in the ceiling. I got down on my knees. I don't know where that slug came from today. So I decided it was a symbol. And when I went to read about it, slugs are androgynous. They, in fact, impregnate themselves. And so I concluded that my painting of Two Spirit had reached a higher level of being, and they were sending a message of approval. And so that's Two Spirit. This is the painting that's in the James E. Lewis Museum at my alma mater. Some people thought I had gone and put a head on this body, but it is not really a head. It is in fact the beings, ancestors and future generations flowing through this vessel of a woman, and that's what is being depicted there. Then I went to the bodiless heads series. And this one is Spirit of My Ancestors. While it is based loosely on my father's face, it does engender a host of my ancestors. And it is meant to look as if it was carved out of a piece of charred wood, to suggest strength and the weathering, resistance, resilience, if you will. More bodiless heads. I believe Kevin owns Driven to Madness. He thought it was a portrait I had done of him, but in fact, it is what it is, and what he saw in it it's okay with me. And so finally, I put the closest thing that I have done to date as an intact body. Before I moved on from this figurative period, I did this painting called Maternal Messenger. At that time, I was working for a maternal and child health organization, and you will know that my healthcare work runs through much of this period, because at 49 years, that's what I was working on: health disparities, closing gaps in access, and advocating for increased access to care as well as coverages. So now I want to talk a little bit more about what the art stands for. And so I say this phrase often: I paint my way through life. And the next series of slides will talk about those subjects that are important to me and give you examples of works that fall in that category. My work is often filled with social commentary. The exhibit I did at City Hall was entitled Woke, and it really utilized a lot of the themes that I incorporate in my work around social commentary. In 2015, we all know about the uprising in Baltimore City. It is also the year that I decided to see what happens if I paint it with my right hand. So this painting of Transfiguration of Freddie Gray is actually done with my right hand. And I paint mostly now with my right, though I do use both on occasion. And this painting, I wanted to humanize Mr. Gray, and to make everyone understand what was happening in our city as a response to his death, but mainly to pay homage to him. And the light of grace is coming through his body. His arms have become wings. He is carrying his beloved family in his heart, even as he was tethered by the thin blue lines. And so this is what I'm calling a prime example of my social commentary. Man in a Box, the issue of mass incarceration. And I had an opportunity to stand in a cell as tiny and dehumanizing as a space and experience as I have ever had, where the toilet is in the middle of the room and two humans are expected to coexist in a space that was just unforgivable. And so, Man in a Box. And then, of course, Empty Windows started as a poem. And as I was riding down Patterson Avenue, I went home, I wrote the poem, it became a painting after that. And of course, I needn't say a thing here. This is Last Breath, and the image that drove me to paint this, you can see there. And the commentary of the heroes that have helped us weather this pandemic, but also the commentary about being masked and being sacred is what I'm attempting to convey with this painting, Masked and Sacred. It's my homage to the healthcare workers that I work beside every day until recently. I took a trip to Ghana just before the shutdown in January 2020. And before that, I did a great deal of reading. I had never known the name The White Lion. It is the ship that brought the first enslaved Africans to this country. I went to Ghana and had the experience of a lifetime. And when I came back, this painting came out. When it's not social commentary, it is just about a thought, a word, or encounter with nature. And so when Kilauea was erupting in 2018, this painting came. The sun rises, everywhere is pretty clear. Busy street at sunset. Literally, I was driving up Pennsylvania Avenue towards Hilton Street. And this is what I saw. Mandaman Mall was off to the left, and the headlight, the sun was there, was setting in front of me, and Busy Street at sunset came out. And then Distant Stars in Urban Skies is just that. It's that even in an urban setting, rural center setting, we see beautiful skies with stars. My work will always have some piece of hope in it, even in the darkness. World Without End is obvious, but the next painting, some just see violence, others see hope. This is my tribute to Miss Erica Bridgeford and her efforts to stem the epidemic of violence in our city. And this painting, I've had the privilege of showing her and to talking to her about the content of it. But you look at it, you see what looks like blood, violence, and the like. But if you look closer, you see patterns of resilience and rebuilding and movement, and that is the hope. And these are other examples of how I search for peace of mind in my work. Serene has the greenness and the flowing effect and of layers of paint and squares to suggest that there is a way to grasp life in a different form and experiencing it in a different way. Imbued with emotion is I'm cool and calm on the outside and looking for some solace internally. And a place of solace is just that, finding an inner peace that looks just like that painting there. And finally, I'm looking for fulfillment in my work. An open door has endless appeal, is opportunity to do something new, different. My ikigai is a Japanese term for finding the sweet spot between your avocation, your vocation, your passion, and all of that. And I feel that art has given me my ikigai and dream catcher. My work is always going to be true to my roots. With this painting, I tried to create my own kente cloth look and just to always signaling the importance of my race, my family roots, my community ties, and the like. So folks who have, artists who have influenced me are these four main ones. Jack Whitton, just incredible use of layering and 3 dimensions in his work, but also his attention to activism and the mission of making sure that he conveyed the activism in his works. Norman Lewis, he started with a figurative, as did Alma Thomas and Mark Rothko. They all had a start as figurative artists. So there was some validation in knowing that, but also Norman Lewis's mission and his activism and his desire to make sure that his work conveyed authenticity to his roots is what draws me to his work. Alma Thomas, our paths are similar. She taught art for 35 years, and then she launched her successful career. So I'm going to be her namesake and follow in her roots and hopefully be somewhat as successful as she. And Mark Rothko, his color palette, the use of large rectangles of just color, but they say so much. And he doesn't even use that much layering. They just are positioned in such a way as to give you many interpretations. And so I have admired him for many years, but now he is, I consider, an influencer. And then there's Mr. Kevin Brown, who he and my good friend Lydia talked me into having a show. And as I said, I was painting and putting the paintings in the closet neatly, but they were going in the closet. I had all kinds of racks and stacked in there. And they put their heads together and suggested that I needed to have a show. I was horrified, mortified. I was hysterical. I can't show these personal paintings. But they prevailed, and I had a very successful show at his restaurant gallery, Nancy by Snack. And he is the owner of that pink painting behind him, but also about 7 others. So he's an avid collector of my art, and I'm ever so grateful to him for his support. So here's where I'm headed with my art. It's something about me. I've got to do strategic planning and building of things. I can't just paint and be an artist. So I'm building a business around it. And so I have the ground floor of my home set up as a gallery. I have a active website. I just launched an online store. I very creatively started doing these lookbooks when we were locked away and I didn't have art, I didn't have exhibits and the like. So they have been extraordinarily well received. And then in 2020, I will do the sign G Clays, sign and number G Clays will be coming. I'm running, I know I'm a little over, and this is the last slide. You don't do any of this by yourself. And so I've been fortunate to have just a wonderfully supportive family and friends. My sisters, I finish a painting, I send it to them to tell me what they think. They also give me names, that kind of things. I want to thank my mentors, Jose Mabley, I know he's with me tonight, and Danny Simmons. They have been very, very helpful in helping me move forward. And my growing list of collectors. I'm part of an affinity group of Black abstract artists. And then all of the exhibit venues and all the curators that have allowed me to show my work. And with that, I'll say thank you. And sorry for running a little over, but I hope we can get as many questions as possible.
No, thank you so much for that. It's very informative. Now we have really gotten to know you, Alma. And so I'm just going to say, I take it you're not left-handed. And so that was what was so poignant about the dream and painting with the left hand, something you are not normally accustomed to. Is that what that means? That you're not left-handed, and that was kind of striking?
Yes, that was, and I failed to say that. And did I not say that my father was a left-handed portraitist?
You did say your father was a left-handed portraitist, but you didn't say you were left-handed or not. That's what I was trying to find out. I figured that was the significance of it, because otherwise it would have been the thing that you normally do. And so I just find it interesting for your father to have been a painter. You're not, I guess you can't say you didn't think about painting, but in 2010, for that to become such a significant dream to have consistently says something about what that was meant for you to do.
Exactly, yes. I've been a collector all my life of art. I never envisioned myself as a visual artist. And so left-handed or right-handed. And so when I was instructed to do this, I had no idea what to do until somebody said, well, just give it a try. And so there we go.
So did they also tell you to put it in the closet after you did it? Or what was the significance of moving it to?
No, they were so personal at that time. Not that they're not now. What has happened is now I see that folks get joy out of my work. At that time, I was really just painting my way through life, interpreting what was going on. And that wasn't for everybody to see as in terms of where I was at that time, until I understood that folks were getting significance out of them and joy and interpretations of their own. And so that's when I became more comfortable with showing.
Okay, there is a question in the chat. It said, in your bio, you say you're second generation. Is that for your father?
Yes, my father was a left-handed portraitist, and he may have gone on to be quite famous. My sisters say his work was just astoundingly realistic. His best friend was Elton Clayfax, who did go on to become they were high school buddies. And so they might have gone on together to be famous, but he made the sacrifice. He was the consummate provider.
Yes.
And I'm grateful and thankful to him.
So I know you said you started painting when you were 62. So going into this as a painter, and you know what the art community is like, it could be competitive, it could be embracing, it can be all kinds of things. And there are things that are hot and there are things that are not. So introducing and coming into this space, what have been some of the challenges that you faced as kind of the newbie on the scene as an artist?
Well, the biggest challenge has been it's been self-imposed. I have not been able to just embrace the fact that I'm an artist. I have to see, I'm almost stumbling as I say that. I would say that I'm a painter. I would do anything but say artist. So my biggest challenge is really just accepting the fact. And I'm doing that. I'm doing it better. The more I do these talks and the more I get responses from collectors and people who are willing to come and see the work and then buy it. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. And then that I am self-taught. And so there's so much to be learned and also continue to do the painting. I'm reading constantly, and thank God for YouTubes where you can Google a particular something and get a good demonstration. But I've had such a wonderful support system. And so I would say those are the two biggest challenges.
Gotcha. We have another question from George. Does your prose or poems ever appear or are referenced in your paintings, titles, or subject matter?
I couldn't hear. You were breaking up a little bit. My internet must be going out. Say that question again.
Does your prose or poems ever appear or are referenced in your paintings, titles, or subject matter?
That's an interesting. Very little do I incorporate them in my paintings. My poetry has been a driving force in a number of paintings. Like Empty Windows, for example. That one was, the poem came first and then the painting. But I have not incorporated words in my work.
Now I'm hesitating because I now am revisiting that question from the point of view of you not acknowledging fully about being a painter, but yet, or an artist, I would say as an artist, and yet there's the writer in you, there's the poet.
Yes.
But the painter who paints in layers, which I can almost see there's the rhythm in poetry that creates a certain layering in message and story delivery, that as a painter, there's also a certain rhythm and layering that goes into the composition. So how we bridge those two, it may not be the words themselves, it may just be in the rhythm and cadence of the movement that creates the image that becomes poetic. I made that up, but it could be how those two things.
That was just beautiful. I loved it. Yes. Clearly, the layering must be drawn from somewhere because it was present from day one when I picked up the paintbrush. I knew I was drawn to showing what was behind as well as what is in front of the image that I was creating.
Gotcha. So I want to also touch on the social commentary that's coming into your work. And I know that a lot of what we're seeing and experiencing, not that it's unjustified, because there's a lot happening in the world right now that is drawing us into social conversations, uncomfortable conversations. We heard all kinds of titles around that. But do you feel compelled to create that social commentary through your work? Is that also something that's driving you to paint the subject matter, or is it really just the lived experience having come through several iterations of where Black people experience challenges in the world?
I deem it as a responsibility. I deem it as an elder, as a person of my age, to leave an interpretation of what has gone on for those who are coming after me, and to tie it to what I have my lived experience, and to also state what I think could be. So I'm trying to do all of that in any given painting or in any series of paintings.
So here's another question. So glad to hear the full story of the impetus of your art. Have you ever tried expressing your art in another medium?
Aside from literary. Is that what they mean? In my visual art in another medium.
That's what I'm thinking. It doesn't say.
Yes, yes. So I am doing a little more mixed media now. I'm using cloth in some of my work, found objects. I'm always picking things up off of the ground and in anticipation of incorporating them in paintings. I've been using acrylic ink and not just acrylic paints. So I'm experimenting more and more.
You mentioned one of the pieces that you went and found some soil or dirt and kind of mixed that in to, what drove you to do that?
I wanted to have a granular effect. And let me tell you, I was madder than a wet hen when I found out you could go and buy mediums that did that even made crackling. I was trying to figure out how to use plaster to make crackling, and then I could just go to Blick and buy all that stuff. But it was a matter of learning. But I wanted to have some dimension and some texture to whatever the painting I was working on at that particular time.
Okay. I want to go back to your influences. I noticed in your influences, they're mostly men. Is that, I know there are a lot of female artists, you just don't see as much of them in the forefront. So what are there other, I don't even say other female influences, or where do you think the status of women artists lives today?
Well,
enter this whole space.
I think that that might be. I think that's interesting that they are men, but there are certainly other folks who are influences on me. But women artists are, as I've been reading it, in abstract world especially, are fighting their way to the top. Whereas men, like Norman Lewis, were there when, especially African American men, when the genre began to really gain its steam. Now, our Black artists are just, they're growing. Their presence is growing. Thank you, Joshua Johnson, and everyone else who's contributing to that. It's just in the mainstream more now than ever.
And I'd like to see us continue in that vein and providing platform for exposure to more women artists who are working regardless of when they enter, but just being able to share the work they're doing and living with is important for all of us to know and experience. So I can appreciate you for sharing and pulling those out of the closet so we could see them. So thank you, Kevin, for pushing you to do that.
And of course, women artists in this city, like Joyce Scott and Linda De Palma and all those folks that I've been hanging out with for years and adoring, just been lighting the way up.
Yeah. So you talked about the business of art too. So I know this is something that artists are looking for people to buy in order to make that a full-time living. Artists can only make a living if they're selling work, but there are other ways. And you mentioned going from your originals to giclées. Is that because of the business of art can be challenging if we're just focusing on originals? I mean, what's the philosophy behind going in that direction?
Going in that direction is because I encounter folks who want to buy my original work that can't afford it. at some, that's the simple answer, to make it more affordable for folks who get some benefit and joy from it.
I appreciate that. One of the things that we have always encouraged as the Joshua Johnson Council is making art accessible. If we can get people to come into the museum to see the work or go to galleries and artist studios, I am a big advocate for visiting an artist studio to see their work, get to know them, and provide that opportunity to make art accessible. And going into the print lane is one way to do that. So I highly encourage anyone listening to make sure that if they're really interested in being a collector, it's really going actually working with the artists to get to know them, visit the studios, and just be able to have that relationship. That's really a good way to start the collection. I also want to just tie back, because you're one of the founding members of the Joshua Johnson Council, and I appreciate that tremendously. Being in this year, 2021, where organizations like this are, of course, still around, but a lot of people may not know about the importance of having started a group like this, and then the sustainability of the group like this. And as a founding member, now practicing artist, what message would you be willing to share with those listening and watching about groups like Joshua Johnson Council and the arts?
Well, the process of affiliation with museums and tying museums to communities in authentic ways, which was the driving force behind Joshua Johnson. That is timeless, because there has been such a gap, whether it's along racial lines, economic lines, whatever. Art has been divorced from schools in many instances. And there is just the need to have authentic voices and authentic vehicles and venues bring this medium to communities, to our youth. It is a way of translating culture, history that has been lost or hidden. And I know you told me to watch my politics.
We're
and,
not censoring. We're just you're free to.
And it's just, and then just to meet artists as who give you another career angle.
Yeah.
Folks are in all kinds of careers, and they're painting on little teeny pieces of paper. One of my most charming stories about my son was taking him for the first time to the High Museum in Atlanta, and the baby whips out a little booklet and little pamphlet, and he's writing about each painting. Writing is in quotes here because he was 4, but and so it's the exposure of that the Joshua Johnson Council and affinity groups and organizations like gallery spaces and museums. That's the impact. That's the reason. All my life, I've been closing gaps, addressing disparities, whether it's health or whatever. And that's what drove me to be a part of Start New Breezes, was to give opportunity for literary artists of color to be able to be presented, and then to be part of the founding group of Joshua Johnson. Same idea.
I appreciate that. And I'm just going to go that you mentioned in your talk that you had that dream and it was in November. And then here we are in November.
Yes.
And you're having this conversation.
Are we entering the last 2 weeks of November? It was so, when you asked me, I did not make that connection, but as I was preparing, I said, how fortuitous, how absolutely wonderful this is.
And
this
I
just 11 years, because that would have been 2010 that I had the dream, but I didn't start actually painting until the following February. But how fortuitous, how wonderful this is to be sharing this story.
And the ancestors work with us, for us, through us all the time. And I say that to also say, that for anybody who has ever thought that they couldn't, I can only see you as an inspiration for people who have been putting things in closets or under beds or in boxes or basements, that you have been the example of how you can have a very successful career in doing the thing you need to do to take care of family, friends, and the like. But it always comes back to that thing that you've always been here to do. And to be at that age where you can freely be and become whatever it is you choose to. And you chose to not just take your literary work, but your visual work is now a part of that experience. And so we all have more to do. And you're just a shining example of how it continues. It's not a next chapter, it's a continuum of a life well lived with lots of stories to tell and things to share. And I thank you for that. I am completely inspired by all that you've been able to present to us this evening, as well as what you've done, because we can see that it's not over until we decide to do something different. It's a pause, a leap, a hop into the next thing, but we're always ready and willing to do that thing whenever it's presented to us. And for you, whether it's through dream or reality, it is the thing we are chosen to do if we just listen to it. And you've told us and shown us that this evening. And I thank you for that. So what's next for Alma?
Well, I'm going to continue to paint. My studio is about 15 feet that way. And I'll be painting probably before the night's over. Really just really trying to make my art more accessible and available. I'm going to be looking into some workshops and some internships, I forget, I'm losing the word, where you can go, retreats, and that, yes, yeah, residencies and the like. And then I've been just, putting my work in call for artists. I've been doing submissions just to get the feedback, if nothing else.
Okay.
And I'll continue to do that.
Nice, nice. I did want to ask you one real quick question. I know we're getting to the end of time. It's like the importance of having your mentors. Was that an important step for you to have that mentorship?
Oh my gosh. And let me just, if Leslie Hammond, King Hammond is out there somewhere, please make sure, Jose, here's my message. Just tremendous, of building confidence. And he was the one saying, go on and do the show too. He was pushing me out the door. But he would say to me, okay, Alma, that's a nice painting, but, and he would give me something to solve in the next painting. He's the one who made me begin painting a face. He said, look, here's an assignment. Go paint a face that's not really a face. And so Unexpected came out. That it's a face, but it's hidden in some dimensions that don't look like a normal face. And so it's been so important. And then Danny Simmons, he's just his work is just profoundly beautiful. He's pushed me and included me in exhibits, given me feedback. It's part of the growth process and just so worthwhile.
Thank you for that. And so you're basically saying you're just getting started. We have a lot more from you.
Just getting started. Just getting started. My father gave up his art to go to work. I'm giving up my work to do my art and to pay him back for his investment. In his sacrifice.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your work, your experience, and your inspiration. This has been a tremendous conversation. I thank you for accepting the invitation, but I think it was destined anyway to be on this particular, in this month at this time and where we are today. So I thank you for that. And I will thank our audience for joining us this evening. We put in the chat and as well as in our live feed of how you can get in touch with Joshua Johnson Council. Also, we put Alma's website also in the chat, just for those who'd like to reach out. Joshua Johnson Council meets on the second Thursday of the month at 6:30 for our talks live. And we thank you for being with us this evening. And we hope you come back and see us again soon. And for that, I say good night.